The Crimson Convergence. The obsidian tower pierced the storm-laden sky like a needle threading through velvet, its spiraling walls carved with runes that pulsed with malevolent light. At its apex, where lightning congregated as if summoned, stood the Sorcerer Malachar, his arms raised in invocation to powers that predated human memory. "Come, children of shadow," he intoned, his voice carrying across the desolate moor despite the howling wind. "Tonight we feast upon the light of the world." From the earth itself, creatures of living darkness began to emerge. Not merely shadows, but gaps in reality where light died screaming. They writhed upward like smoke given terrible purpose, their forms suggesting claws and teeth and eyes that burned with the cold fire of distant stars. Vampirella materialized at the tower's base as if stepping from a fold in the night itself. Her pale skin seemed to drink in the scattered moonlight, while her dark hair whipped about her shoulders like a banner of war. She had tracked Malachar across 3 continents and through dimensions where geometry wept, following the trail of withered souls he left in his wake. "Your midnight carnival ends here, sorcerer," she called up to him, her voice carrying an authority older than empires. Malachar's laughter cascaded down the tower's walls like acid rain. "Ah, the legendary Vampirella, how fitting that you should arrive for the grand finale. Tell me, blood drinker, do you know what lies beneath this tower?" She did not answer, but her crimson eyes narrowed as she felt it. A thrumming in the earth, a heartbeat made of darkness and hunger. Whatever slumbered below was ancient and vast, something that had been dreaming nightmares since before the continents took their current shape. "The Hollow King," Malachar continued, his form beginning to blur as shadows wrapped around him like living silk, "imprisoned here by a covenant of Lightbringers centuries ago. But covenants can be broken, and tonight, with the convergence of the blood moon and the dying of the sacred fires, his prison walls grow thin." The shadow creatures descended upon her like a tide of liquid night. Vampirella moved with predatory grace, her form seeming to bend and flow around their attacks. Where her hands passed through them, they dissipated with shrieks that sounded almost grateful, as if she were offering them release from their unnatural existence. But for every creature she dispersed, 2 more emerged from the earth. The air itself began to thicken with malevolence, and she realized this was no mere battle but a ritual. Each destroyed shadow spawn released energy that fed into the tower's runes, making them pulse brighter, making the thrumming beneath the earth grow stronger. "Clever," she admitted, leaping backward to gain distance. "You're using me as your instrument. My victory feeds your working." "Precisely," Malachar's voice now echoed from everywhere and nowhere, as he had become one with the tower's structure. "Fight or flee, it matters not. The Hollow King stirs, and when he wakes, every light in the world will be extinguished. Every soul will know the cold embrace of perfect darkness." The ground beneath the tower cracked, and through the fissures came a sound that was not quite breathing, more like the universe itself gasping in terror. Whatever lay beneath was beginning to stir. Vampirella closed her eyes and reached deep within herself, to the place where her vampiric nature intersected with something far more primal. She was no mere blood drinker. She was a guardian of the balance between light and dark, life and death, and sometimes to preserve that balance one had to embrace paradox. "You're right about one thing, Malachar," she said, opening her eyes to reveal irises that now blazed like twin stars. "Light and darkness are eternal adversaries, but you've forgotten something crucial." She began to ascend the tower's walls, not climbing but flowing upward like darkness given form and purpose. The shadow creatures reached for her, but she had become something they couldn't touch. Not light, not dark, but the space between where both could exist. "Impossible," Malachar's voice wavered for the first time. "You cannot be both predator and protector, darkness and light." "Can't I?" Vampirella's form solidified as she reached the tower's apex, standing before the sorcerer who now appeared more specter than man. "I am the darkness that hunts other darkness, the night that stands guard while the innocent sleep. You see contradiction where there is only completion." The ritual circle around them pulsed with increasing urgency as the entity below pressed against its weakening bonds. Cracks appeared in the tower's stone, and through them seeped a cold that had nothing to do with temperature. The absolute cold of a universe before stars learned to burn. "Even if you stop me," Malachar snarled, his form beginning to fragment as the tower's stability wavered. "Others will come. The darkness is patient. The darkness is eternal." "Yes," Vampirella agreed, moving to stand at the ritual circle's center. "And so am I." She pressed her palms to the obsidian floor and felt the vast intelligence below recoil from her touch. The Hollow King was ancient and terrible, but it was also bound by laws older than its imprisonment. It could not wake without a willing herald to break the final seal, and that herald had to offer something precious in exchange. Malachar had planned to offer the light of the world, stolen through his shadow spawn. But Vampirella offered something else entirely. "I give you my darkness," she whispered to the entity below. "All of it, every shadow in my soul, every drop of blood I've tasted, every whisper of the night that lives within me. Take it all." The Hollow King's attention focused on her like the weight of collapsing stars. For a moment that stretched into eternity, she felt her vampiric nature being drawn away, pulled into the hungry void below. The part of her that craved blood, that found strength in shadow, that walked in the spaces between life and death. All of it flung downward into the waiting abyss, and with it went the entity's accumulated power. "No," Malachar screamed as he realized what was happening. "You cannot feed darkness to darkness. It will make it stronger, will it?" Vampirella smiled, though the effort cost her greatly. Without her vampiric nature, she was merely human, but she was still herself. Or will it finally give the Hollow King what it has always truly wanted? The thrumming beneath the earth changed pitch, became something almost like a sigh. The cracks in the tower began to seal themselves, and the runes grew dim. Far below, the Hollow King tasted darkness distilled by centuries of noble purpose, darkness that had chosen to protect rather than destroy. And in that paradox it found not power but peace. For the first time in eons, the entity below stopped fighting its bonds and settled into a sleep that was no longer tormented by dreams of conquest. Malachar's form wavered like heat mirage as his connection to the power below was severed. "What have you done?" he whispered. "I've given a nightmare what it needed to become a dream," she replied. "The Hollow King was never evil, Malachar. It was just hungry for purpose, for meaning, for darkness that chose to serve the light." The sorcerer's scream of rage was cut short as his borrowed power fled him, leaving only a mortal man standing in the ruins of his ambition. He aged decades in seconds, his skin becoming parchment, his dark hair turning white as winter snow. "I am undone," he gasped, collapsing to his knees. Vampirella knelt beside him, her movements purely human now, graceful but no longer supernatural. "You're free," she corrected gently. "Free from the darkness that was eating you alive. What you do with that freedom is your choice." As dawn began to touch the horizon, the obsidian tower started to crumble, its purpose fulfilled and its power spent. The shadow creatures faded like mist before the sun, no longer bound to this world by magical compulsion. Malachar looked up at her with eyes that were human once more, confused, frightened, but human. I remember who I was before the hunger for power consumed me. But you, what are you now, without your darkness, without your vampiric nature?" Vampirella stood and looked toward the rising sun, feeling its warmth on her skin for the first time in centuries without the urge to flee from it. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think I'm about to find out." She began walking away from the crumbling tower, leaving Malachar to contemplate his choices. Behind her, the earth settled peacefully over the resting place of the Hollow King, who would dream now of noble darkness and protective shadows until the world had need of such dreams again. The balance was maintained, as it always was, through sacrifice and transformation. And though Vampirella's vampiric nature was gone, something else remained, something that had always been there, waiting beneath the supernatural power. The part of her that chose to stand between the innocent and the dark, not because of what she was, but because of who she was. As the sun climbed higher, she smiled and continued walking toward whatever new chapter of her existence awaited. Some stories end with the dawn, but others simply transform, like shadows becoming light, like darkness learning to dream. The tower fell to ruins behind her, but the echo of her choice would ripple through dimensions yet unknown. A reminder that sometimes the greatest victory lies not in defeating darkness, but in teaching it to serve the light.